Okay, so I want to take a minute and talk about which form of handwriting to teach. And I know that some of you do not have control over this in your schools. I'm perfectly aware of this. But I also want you to have an understanding of what you're facing with cursive and with manuscript. I also know that some of us live in states. I know Minnesota as a state mandates manuscript for kindergarten and first grade because Pallas School wanted to switch and they couldn't because of state mandates. Others of you live in states where you have more choices. So I want to just look at the issues with cursive and manuscript. If you begin with cursive, students struggle less with reversals because in manuscript it's very easy to reverse B and D, but cursive emphasizes the direction of reading and writing, and reversals are no longer a problem. The same with P and Q. Students in manuscript have enormous difficulty, don't they, with spacing. And this problem goes completely away in cursive because the letters are connected and you actually lift up your pencil between words. So cursive becomes an instant solution to how to deal with spacing. In cursive, all of the lowercase letters begin in one place on the baseline. At least if you use our Rhythm of Handwriting program, that's true. If you begin with manuscript, they begin in 7 different places. So when you begin with lowercase letters, you always have to start at the midline, start at the top line, start halfway between the midline and the baseline, and so forth. And it may surprise you, but cursive was taught first in the United States until the 1940s. So it is a relatively new part of education to begin with manuscript. In fact, manuscript was part of this movement of education where Dick and Jane came in the schools and sight words came into the schools as a method of teaching. That is the same time that cursive went out and manuscript came in. But most of the world still begins and teaches cursive as the form of handwriting. In fact, this is a children's book in French. In cursive, which emphasizes cursive handwriting to students. And I want to be clear, most French children's books are in book face. So kids learn to read in book face and write in cursive, as they do in Russia and in most of the world. Many of our peers who grew up in the United Kingdom will tell you that they did not learn manuscript. They learned cursive. And that is now changed in the United Kingdom. They followed the United States, which was a mistake. But many people my age learned cursive first in the schools, and they only learned manuscript if they took a drafting class. So I like to summarize this. Cursive was designed for the human hand. Take a moment and write the word teacher in cursive and in manuscript. And as you write it, think about the fine motor skill involved. Which one requires more fine motor skill? Which one needs more fine motor? Why? Because you are lifting the pencil. Printing was designed for the printing press. It was designed for movable type. And it's really not a problem to teach both. People have done it for a long time. And we'll, again, dig a little deeper. Now, how many of you, as teachers, write in beautiful, perfect cursive? Again, there's no one in this room. One person? But usually, it's the exception in a room of Americans. How many of you blend cursive and manuscript? This is pretty much the whole country. How many of you write in manuscript only? Okay? And the reason a vast majority of Americans blend is because handwriting is about muscle memory. So if you start in kindergarten and spend 2 or 3 years writing in manuscript, you have 2 or 3 years of muscle memory developed. And when you switch to cursive in 3rd grade, they have to overcome that muscle memory. I also want you to think about, if you're a musician, how difficult it is if you learn a piece wrong to undo the muscle memory as opposed to if you learn it correctly. So muscle memory is something easier to learn correctly the first time than to undo it. It's a very strong pathway. So most of us blend because we recognize cursive is faster, but the muscle memory is there from when we were very first instructed. Now, what about this fact that you learn to read in book face? Okay, first of all, we already have a problem with manuscript, don't we? Because a is also written in another way in book face, right? So we already have to teach two forms of this phonogram. And the manuscript version reflects one of them, but what's different about the cursive version? A little connector stroke and a little connector stroke. Those connector strokes make it much easier for the human hand. But visually, there's very little difference. It's like shades of color. You don't teach children that every possible shade of red is red. You teach them this is red, and pretty soon they get it. The same thing with fonts. If you go look through your computer fonts, you're going to discover that there are many shades of a, right? And there's two primary ones that those are based off of. How about g, j? We have this problem, don't we? And many people think we read in manuscript. No, we read in book face fonts. And many people make the mistake of not teaching the connection and relationship between these. And once again, the main difference is a connector, which is much easier for the human hand. And there are a couple of odd ones like Z, but the benefits of cursive far outweigh the fact that you need to learn one more relationship here. So whether you teach cursive or book face, you need to teach the relationships between the fonts and the way that we write. And then, would you like to see Paula teach? A little peek into Paula's classroom.
Remember how we match pages where they're written a little differently? Well, we're going to do that. Everyone's going to get a card, and you have to find your partner that matches you. So come up here and get a card, and then find your partner. Kate? Go around and look for the person that has the same one as you do.
Do you have a cigarette?
Once you get your partner, sit down beside him, please. Turn and talk to your partner and say the sound that you have. D. What's it? Which one? Just.
So a little view that you can use these games, you can get kids up and moving in the classroom.